What is happening out there, Roto Scouts, basketball and football fans? Monday Night Football. Welcome to the show. Solid little 8-gamer on the NBA slate, too. Should be a good one. Lots to talk about. A little bit of a late start. Apologies for keeping you guys waiting a couple minutes beyond the already late 4:30. Just had to get a bunch of stuff lined up, a bunch of stuff updated. Make sure we're ready to rock and roll for this thing. Talk about all the right plays. Don't want to be pushing anybody toward injured Dallas Goedert by accident. Want to make sure we're looking through the Jack Stolls and Grant Calcaterras of the world. The Alberto Quegmanoms. Have everything updated for NBA. Ran the Sims. We're all set there. Sure, a bunch of stuff is going to change. Right now, it looks like a fairly tame NBA slate in terms of the injury news. We're not waiting on a ton of crazy impactful stuff. Had a lot of outs that we already knew about. Handful of guys that we'll talk about coming into that show. Mike's loud? How about now? How's that sound to you? Maybe your speakers are up a little bit. Did you turn your speakers up? Because I don't think I adjusted the mic. But it does actually, maybe it is peaking a little high. There's a little knob on the front of it. Let me know how I sound. We can make adjustments as we go. Give it to me on a of 10 kind of a scale. Say are we at, am I at a 10 of 10 volume wise? Or did I come down to after being at a 10, am I now at an 8? Let me know where the volume sounds like. Yeah, hopefully we'll get that squared away. Sorry about that. Sorry I blew out anybody's speakers or anything. You turned them down. All right. If I go all the way off, that's not going to help anything. That's too high. You come in here. How do we sound right here? Give me a go no go on this level of volume. Hopefully you can hear me at all. So yeah, another great football game on this end of lock for the primetime game. We thought that on Thursday, of course, and then we got kind of a clunker between the Ravens and the Bengals. Not anybody's favorite. Obviously, if we knew what we knew 10 minutes into the game prior to lock, I think we all would have played our Joe Burrow shares differently. We definitely would have been less enthused about that game. But yeah, this one looks like a good one on this side. We'll see what happens. Sounds good now? Gilbert Powell says it sounds good. Appreciate that. Matthew Patterson's here. Looking forward to some turkey. I'll be going into my third Thanksgiving. Solid day yesterday at my friend's house. That's why we weren't around yesterday for updates, late breaking updates on the NBA slate. I put a note up about it, so hopefully, anytime I've got notes on the site, always pays to read them just to make sure you're up to speed on where we're going to be. If I'm not going to be able, especially with NBA where those rankings, those updates become pretty critical, you always want to know if it's a day that I'm not going to be able to update it. That said, 5% of days I'll be there to update it. But yeah, yesterday, good time at my friend Janine and Brian's house. A lot of turkey, a lot of laughs, some drinks. So that was fake Thanksgiving number 2, and then on to real Thanksgiving this Thursday. I'm actually going to be heading down to my parents' house sometime early in the week, either tomorrow or Wednesday. Joker's enthusiastic about it. So keep an eye on the schedule. All projections and everything will be up. I'm going to have everything for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday through the weekend. No issues with that. We'll have Thursday Thanksgiving football projections. The thing I'm not entirely sure about is what shows are going to look like from their house, because I'll be doing everything from my laptop. I've joined streaming before from my laptop, and I don't think it'll be a problem, but I've never done a solo show just from the laptop. It's also dealing with a much smaller screen, a lot of so we'll see what shows look like for probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and maybe the weekend. But we'll definitely have all the content, all the written content. If I'm still there into the weekend, all the written content for football will still be up. All the typical basketball day-by-day projections, notes, and everything will be up. So no need to panic, but just wanted to keep you guys in mind as I plan out my day. My mom texted me before. She's like, they have to pick me up because I got the dog, the cat, and everything. So she was like, early tomorrow morning pickup? It's like, ooh, wow, that snuck up on me. Thinking Wednesday-ish. We'll see if we can squeeze tomorrow in. Do a show tomorrow. Anyway, got the football up on the screen. We're starting with football. Solid little showdown slate. A lot of moving parts in terms of the Chiefs and just how their offense works. You can see that just kind of through the projections here. Right, Rashee Rice drawing a nice projection at the receiver spot, but then all the other pass catchers, there's a lot of guys, normally for football, we see one guy in the 10 to 12 range, another guy in the 8 to 9 range, the prime number 1, a good number 2, and then a few mixed bag type guys. I kind of like this about the Chiefs for showdown slates. Just the variety of options and the kind of, it could be any given guy's night. It could just be a spread it around night. So I do think there's value in just having these Mecole Hardmans of the world, the MVSs of the world, the Sky Moores, Justin Watson. There's some value in just having that kind of a spread at the wide receiver position on KC. Obviously, you've got Travis Kelce operates as the prime number one, and then Rashee Rice is the number one at the wide receiver position now with the way that things have kind of fallen. So if you wanted to look at it that way, sure, they do have the 1-1A or the 1-2 punch at the top. But I just, with the wide receiver spot specifically, I like having a bunch of guys where there's not as much surety of where the ball's going to go and who's going to be relevant. For showdown slates, it's kind of ideal. On the Eagles side, a lot more clear cut. We know that AJ's getting the ball a lot. We know DeAndre Swift is getting the ball a lot. We know Devonta Smith is getting the ball a lot. Outside of that, there'll be a few touches for Kenny Gainwell, OZ, maybe some Julio Jones. The big question mark with the Eagles is the tight end spot. Dallas Goedert getting hurt, out for the season. Or is he out for the season? I was thinking of Mark Andrews. Dallas Goedert's hurt. Let's put it that way. He's not playing tonight. I forget what the injury is. So we'll get Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, Albert Okwuegbunam. I would consider Alberto the lowest end guy in that group. He was with the team last week. He played 6 snaps on offense, ran 2 routes, was not targeted. Just by virtue of having been with the team, I think Calcaterra steps up. I think Jack Stoll steps up a little bit. That said, it's not like those are very frequently targeted tight ends. Looking at Stoll, he's got 2 catches on the season. Run a handful of routes every week. Calcaterra has no catches on the season. Run a handful of routes most weeks. Fewer routes than Stoll. I think it's Stoll 1, Calcaterra 2, and then Alberto maybe out there just block on a couple plays. But I do think it creates a situation where you can probably play some Calcaterra for that just low-end tight end upside, potential touchdown upside. It gives you those cheapo dart throw tight ends on this side. If anybody's got a different read on that, or if you saw any, Albert Okwuegbunam's going to be our number one and we're going to target him 10 times kind of news, let me know. I didn't really catch anything that gave any real clear-cut indications as to where that's going. And it could just mean it's just an uptick for the wide receiver core, and these guys are just basically out there to block. I could definitely see that. But you're going from, get over here. Come on. So, we're going from a tight end. Okay, Joker, enough. In his most recent full game, in Week 8, Goddard was targeted 7 times, caught 4 of them. He was targeted 5 times in Week 7, 8 times, 9 times. So, he is a 6 to 8 target tight end on average. Call it 7-ish on average. So there are some tight end looks to go around here. I do think it makes it interesting down depth chart. You've obviously got an extremely cheap Calcaterra. Let me open up the... So as we know, those are like the kind of cheapo options. One or 2 looks, get it in the right part of the field. Makes it kind of interesting. So let's go through the man by man of it here. Now let me grab the and set up the positional boards. I still have all this in here. That's what happens when I procrastinate. That's right. Now these are ready because I didn't show them over the weekend. Hang on one sec. Talk amongst yourselves. I like the running back spot in this game. Kind of clear cut on both sides. I think the biggest wild card is probably Jerick McKinnon. You can kind of see that in the projections a little bit more so than Kenny Gainwell. But I just like having the pretty clear-cut number 1 options in the running game. I don't like when for showdown slates when there's a lot of variability in the rushing game. Not as much as in the passing game for whatever reason. All right, so let's get into this. two extremely high-end quarterbacks in play here, obviously. No need to sell anybody shares of Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. I think you guys are going to get to those pretty naturally here. Mahomes last time out, just to put a little button on it, 20 of 30, just 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. The game before that at Denver, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 240 yards on 24 of 38 passing. So, two not great Mahomes games in a row. The Miami game, a little bit of a letdown in terms of his actual performance. And then the Denver game, obviously, was kind of tragic just across the board for Kansas City. But the game before that, Denver won Week 7 against the Chargers, 424 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 306 yards and a touchdown the week before that. I think any downturn statistically from Mahomes in terms of like total touchdown passes over the course of this season, total yardage, a lot of it can just be attributed to the pool of wideouts that he has to work with. As much as I might like that there are a lot of limited wide receivers and clunky options that he's throwing the ball to for DFS purposes, for real football, it would probably be better to get Pat Mahomes, a clear 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position to go with Travis Kelce, kind of like what he used to have. Kelce catch a bottle of water touchdown, says Kevin O. Is that a reference to the Taylor Swift heat wave thing? I don't know. I haven't really been following along. I know there's a crazy heat wave that's like killing people at her shows, which isn't good. Much as I don't know anything about Taylor Swift songs, I don't think they're worth dying for. Maybe they are. Maybe she's really good. Apparently, my friend Brian, they were talking about it at Fake Thanksgiving. He's a dad of 3 daughters and a son, so they're all in that like zone for Taylor Swift. But I don't think any of the kids like her as much as he does. From I guess just listening in the car or whatever. So he did a whole thing where he like dragged one of them to the concert. He was telling us about it. She was like, "Yeah, it was all right. It was one time." And he's sitting there like, "Oh my God, she played this, she played that." Just funny. Yeah, I couldn't identify one of her songs. Taylor Swift not going to be at the game, fade Kelce. Maybe that leads to the Kelce monster, though. I mean, maybe he has what did he have? 14 yards in the Miami game. Was she at that one? 58 yards in the Denver game. Was she at that one? I haven't been tracking it. I think she was at the Chargers game where he went off for 179 and a touchdown, 12 catches. It's Travis Kelce. I mean, those clunkers kind of go in line with the Mahomes clunkers those last two games. 6 for 58 and a touchdown from Travis Kelce is not going to get it done. Not at the 10,000, 15,000 in the captain spot, the 14,000 on the FanDuel slate. At those prices, you kind of do need Travis Kelce to get in the end zone if this is going to be a game with any kind of scoring involved. Mahomes going up against an Eagles defense that's allowing 6.4 yards per pass attempt, 257 yards a game, and 19 touchdowns. Not really a great pass defense on the Eagles side of things. They're ranked 14th. They're ranked 7th against the run. Stout rush defense. But Mahomes is going to have the opportunity to throw. 8.5 yard defensive ADOT. They are pressuring the quarterback 25% of the time. They've got 30 sacks on the other side. The Chiefs have 31 sacks. They gain pressure 28% of the time. They do it with a 33% blitz rate, though. So you got to think that if Hurts finds a little time, he's got that scramble ability, he's got the breakaway speed to get out of trouble, and then he's going to have the opportunity to maybe find some of his receivers downfield. So I don't mind that at all. Oh, why is Mahomes not coming up here? He must be Pat Mahomes the second in where do these come from? That's advanced passers. He's there. That's all the advanced have. Yep. As far as them, I mean, there's not really that much need to look through these numbers. We know that we're going to these guys. But 271 yards a game for Mahomes, 260 for Jalen Hurts, 15 touchdowns through the air for Hurts, 17 for Mahomes. They've both thrown 8 picks, 7.3 yards per pass attempt for Mahomes, 7.7 for Hurts. Hurts has run 7 touchdowns in between his scramble ability and the just pick him up and throw him into the end zone play. Pretty monstrous, 316 yards. He runs the ball basically 10 times a game, 3.6 yards per rush attempt. Just pads his very, very capable scoring. They're 1-1A options on both sides. They project very similarly. They both project very, very well. Star quarterbacks, no issues going to them. The question becomes, where do we put them? And that's what we'll look at in the builder section of the show. We'll go into what happens when we put him in the captain spot, particularly on DK. FanDuel, fire away. Captain spot, doesn't matter. MVP spot, no multiplier. So you definitely want to have a big share of those guys in the MVP spot. At the running back position, like I said, pretty clear cut. Top options on both sides. Isaiah Pacheco, last time out, carried the ball 16 times for 66 yards. Ran 18 routes, only one target. Week before that, the Denver game, carried the ball 8 times for 40 yards. Ran 17 routes, was targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them for -3 yards. Not a big average depth of target, I wouldn't think, coming out of the backfield for Pacheco. Those are probably just all little screen passes. 13 carries, 32 yards a week in week 7, 16 for 62 in week 6. So we're getting roughly the 16-ish carries, I think, is a pretty good baseline. Maybe a handful of targets. They've targeted him week 6 through 8, 6, 4, and 4 targets. So the one target outlier against Miami, the one target game against Miami, I think is more of an outlier. He did have a one target game in week 5 on the other side of that, but 3 or more in most of the games at the beginning of the season. So I think we're dealing with essentially 20-ish touches, call it 18, but the clear lead back in that backfield. The issue there with him is the Eagles have a good rush defense. 3.7 yards per attempt, 66 yards a game, 0.3 touchdowns a game. On the other side, the Chiefs not allowing many rushing touchdowns this season either, but they're allowing significantly more yardage. 4.5 yards per rush attempt ranks 27th, but they've been bend don't break. They're also 5.5 yards per pass attempt ranks 3rd. So their pass defense has been good, where their rush defense has been more allow the yardage but don't allow the touchdowns. When we get into the Eagles side, I didn't actually mean to scroll that over. All this info's over there, but I'm just reading it off of a different thing. Eagles. Swifty, 18 carries last week, 16 the week before, 15. Handful of targets each week, all the way up to a 10-target game in week 6. You definitely see him coming out of the backfield and getting a few of those tight end targets just swung out his direction. Obviously different kind of plays, but I could see them filling some of those typical Goddard targets with a few more targets for the backfield. And Swift is he's a high-end back. Just 3 touchdowns on the season if we want to nitpick anything, but a bunch of decent games in here for combined yardage from scrimmage. So I have no issues loading up on Swift shares. I think he's playable in the captain spot at 12.6. Pacheco probably a little bit more playable, even though it's a slightly lower projection. Well, maybe not actually, because it's a lower projection because of the good defense on the other side. So Swift probably the slightly better captain option between the two. And then if we get into the Kenny Gainwells of the world, Kenny, 3 carries for 22 the last time out, ran 10 routes, was targeted once. In week 8, he ran 13 routes, drew 5 targets, caught all 5 of them for 30 yards. That was his target high, that was his catch high on the season. He only carried the ball twice for -4 yards in that game. 8 carries for 16, 2 carries for 13 going back in time. Not a lot of volume for Kenny Gainwell. Rashad Penny has been out for most of the season. I do think he's going to be there. I do not think that there's all that much value in it. Carried the ball 2 times for 8 yards in week 9 against Dallas after missing 6 straight weeks. In week 2, when this was more still of a question mark of what this backfield was going to look like, carried the ball 3 times for 9 yards, caught 1 of 1 for 5 yards. I don't think we're getting anywhere near anything more than that kind of involvement for Rashad Penny. Maybe he's out there. If he sees 10 snaps, he carries the ball 4 times. That last game that I was just reading, he saw it was just 2 snaps. They gave him the ball both of those snaps. But I think that's all you're getting from Rashad Penny. So if you're going to a second running back from the Eagles side, it's Kenny Gainwell. There's a little bit more, and he doesn't have much. There's a little bit more on the Chiefs side, I think. Just in that Jerick McKinnon is a little bit more of a participant in the offense. He at least runs a lot of routes. So any given week, you might get that day where Jerick McKinnon gets those right targets. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns on the year. Week 3, he had a 2-touchdown game. Caught 3 balls for 19 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then he scored a touchdown in week 9 in that Miami game. 2 catches, 22 yards, and a touchdown. He doesn't run the ball a ton. Just 1 carry that week, 2 carries each of the 2 weeks before that. Had a 0 carry week in week 6. Peak carries for the season for Jerick McKinnon was the 3 that he had in week 4 against the Jets. You're just looking for the 10 to 15 routes that he runs every week. And the 3 to 5 target, it's really 2 to 5 targets. But he's been targeted at least once in every single game. Mostly 2 or 3 times. With a peak of 5. I think he's the strongest option out of the secondary and tertiary running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't play week 9. 1 carry in week 8, 2 carries in week 7, and so on and so forth. Had a 15 carry game back in week 3, but that was before they kind of decided that this was the Pacheco backfield. Or was Pacheco active that week? Yeah, Pacheco in week 3 had 15 carries. So they kind of split the duties that week. But I see no real reason to consider CEH much of an option at all, even in a showdown sense. If he gets the ball near the goal line, maybe he busts one in. That's what you're hoping for. Dart throw of a running back. But again, do you want to go down depth chart to running backs against a very good rush defense? It's probably pretty thin. Travis Kelce, a number 1 tight end. Easy to go to. You consider him the number 1 wide receiver on this team. Just 25 routes, caught 3 of 4 in week 9 against Miami. That was just 14 yards, like we saw before. 6 catches for 58 in the game against Denver. And then 2 biggies. Week 6 was also against Denver. That was the home game. 9 catches for 124 on 9 targets. Caught 12 of 13 against the Chargers in week 7 for 179 yards and a touchdown. That's the any given slate upside that Travis Kelce has. It could be 179, 180, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. A 3-touchdown game, probably with less yardage, is not out of the question. He is just an absolute monster of a position player. For showdown slates, he's going to be extremely, extremely popular in both the flex roles and the captain roles. But I think you just cram him in. I mean, he is just too good to avoid. So you get him in, and then you can get different by just making different combinations of a lot of these downstream receivers. So we know Kelce's a big target. We've got Rashee Rice, who is operating the last few weeks as the number 1 wideout, the number 1 wide receiver. 25-plus routes every week out of the last 4, except for week 9 when he only ran 23. Let's call that 25. 2 catches that week, was targeted twice. That was his least output. That was everybody on this team's most limited output. Week 8, he was targeted 5 times, caught 4 of them for 56. 60 yards and a touchdown on 5 catches in week 7. That was 5 out of 6. Caught 4 of 4 for 72 in week 6. So we get clear volume, clear targeting. When he's out there running routes, he gets a lot of first reads. So I do think that Rashee Rice deserves to be considered as the next man up, the next best receiver in that offense, pass catcher in that offense. 7,400, it's fair, but by comparison to all the other receivers in this offense, like paying 74 for Rashee Rice, you're paying more for him in the flex than you are for anyone else in the captain. So there is a salary impact there, but you're buying those additional targets. You're buying a little bit of security. It's not extreme security, though. We are still talking about a receiver who, even in those good weeks, it's 27, 29, 28, and 23 routes run. By comparison, I wouldn't even go to AJ. I'll go to Devonta Smith. Well, actually, Smith runs a few more routes than AJ. I'll look at AJ, the number 1 wideout on the other team. Those the same 4 weeks, 46, 34, 38, and 31. Smith went 48, 36, 47, and 32. Hell, even Olamide Zacchaeus, 40, 22, 18, 14. Julio Jones, 10, 9, and 11. So he lands somewhere between Zacchaeus and 20% off the top of the actual receivers from the Eagles in terms of just routes run. So that's the limiting factor with these Chiefs. There is a spread. There is an opportunity spread. So I don't know that Rice's salary is necessarily justifiable. If that lowers his ownership in comparison to some of these other guys, then great. But I do think comparative to the other guys on his team, he is a little bit pricey. Justin Watson, Justin Watson's routes are a good comparison point, or Sky Moore's. Watson missed week 7, but in weeks 8 and 9, he ran 19 and 21 routes. He was targeted 3 times, 5 times. Caught just 2 of them each week for 42 yards and 15 yards. But he runs a similar set of routes. 19 routes run in each of weeks 5 and 6. Sky Moore has run 20 routes every single week since week 5, except for that Miami game, when he only ran 10. He was targeted 3 times. He caught 2 of them for 33. MVS, over that same stretch, Marquez Valdez-Scantling has run more routes than Rashee Rice, I think. I don't have the exact total, but his last 4 weeks, 36, 31, 26, 19. It's really close. He was targeted 5 times, 4 times, 3 times the last couple of games, had an 84-yard and a touchdown game back in Week 7 against the Chargers, the week that this team did really well. Clunkers the last 2 catches a week, 27 and 22 yards. Mecole Hardman down the board, 7 routes run against Miami, 17 against Denver. Just 2 catches for 13 yards, and that one 3 catches for 10 yards in the Miami game. Kadarius Toney hasn't seen more than 1 catch since Week 6. Hasn't seen more than 1 target since Week 6. He scored a touchdown that week, put up 9 yards on those 3 catches. Caught 3 of 6 targets. The routes are down the last 3 weeks, just 8, 9, and 4 routes. So I think if we want to find somebody who's our least favorite option, but the projections are already kind of telling us that, but we've got to give him a little bit of credit for running some routes. A little bit of credit for when they do. He's kind of gadgety in that when they put him out there, they might be looking in his direction a little bit more than if he was just out there all the time. Now that it's just a get out there for a few plays a game. But I think if we're talking about a guy who's just an extreme dart throw, Kadarius Toney's probably that guy. Then Richie James has missed basically the entire season. Last played in Week 2, ran 3 routes that week. I do not think that Richie James is going to be relevant. I would just take him out. That's why he's at 0.15 fantasy points. A lot more clear cut on the Eagles side. Kevin O makes a good point. Hardman, or is that a point or a question? Let me double check it. We do like to any advantage we can gain by having special teamers who return kicks and punts is always good. Is Hardman returning kicks and punts? Looks like he did return punts in Week 9. Might have just been all touchbacks on the kickoffs. It's a 0. He had a 14-yard kickoff return in Week 8. But that was the only statistical kick return that I'm seeing here. But has been returning punts. Hasn't really done much. But it does seem like that's the... let's see. Yeah, depth chart-wise, they've got him listed as the primary return man for both, and Richie James as the secondary. So you might see Richie James step into that role if he's healthy and plays, rather than do anything in terms of just maybe make him straight special teams and have Mecole just be a straight receiver. But that said, right now, depth chart-wise, Mecole is in that role. And then if we want to say Eagles, on the Eagles side, it's still Covey, I think, right? Britton Covey for punts, Boston Scott for kicks, it looks like. Britton Covey, oh, is he not? Did I wipe him out by accident? Britton Covey does not have much of a projection or anything down here. Whatever, doesn't matter. That's where most of that comes from. He's only a $200 guy, but you're looking, if you play any Britton Covey, you're obviously just looking for the punt return touchdown. So for the Eagles, it's AJ, it's Devonta Smith. Everybody's going to be going to those guys. They're going to be popular. AJ's on a run of 3 straight games with a touchdown. He had just 66 yards against Dallas, but did score a touchdown on that. That broke a streak of 6 games with at least 125 yards receiving. He's on a streak of every game this season except for Week 2. He's had at least 7 catches. Week 2, he only had 4 catches for 29 yards. The hell happened Week 2? He played drunk? 31 routes, just targeted 6 times. That was a weird week. Every other week has been just basically dynamite for A.J. Brown. Not even the yardage and the catch totals are significant enough that even if you don't get him in the end zone, probably won't be your favorite captain play, obviously. But as a flex play, just based on catches and yardage, especially on DK, PPR, AJ is a monster play. Devonta Smith, 3 catches for 51 and a touchdown in Week 9. 7 for 99 and a touchdown in week 8. Targeted 7 times that game, 3 times in week 9, so he's caught all 10 of his last 10 balls. 4 of 5 for 49 yards against Miami in week 7. Only over 100 yards once this season. He's peaked at 7 catches. So his peak has been the average for A.J. Brown, or the minimal for A.J. Brown for most weeks. But a very, very high-end, very, very capable target. In terms of the depth of target, they all just operate down the field. 13-yard A-dot for A.J. Brown, 12.2-yard A-dot for Devontae Smith, and then 12.2 yards for Olamide Zaccheaus, who is the nominal third man at this point. 14 routes run in week 9, 2 targets, caught one of them for 8 yards. Similar game the week before that, 18 routes run, 1 target, caught it for 5 yards. Hasn't had a 2-catch game since the week 3 game in which he caught 2 for 58 yards and a touchdown. Since then, we're really just dealing with 2 targets a game, if that, 1 catch a game, if that, and 10 or less yards. Hasn't been pretty. Julio, since joining this team, 10 routes the first week, 9 routes the second week, 11 routes the third week. Bye week in week 10, so coming off the bye, maybe they schemed a little bit for Julio, but we are dealing with a old, washed-up version of Julio Jones. It's not like we went back in time and got the old guy. Week 8, he caught his one of his 2 targets for 8 yards and a touchdown. If on a showdown slate he gets in the end zone, that's critical. That was his lone red zone target in the 3 weeks he's been back. Zaccheaus has been targeted twice in the red zone all season. He scored the 1 touchdown. Devontae Smith has been targeted twice in the red zone all season. 1 in week 1, 1 in week 5. Red zone targets for AJ, just 1 each of the last 3 weeks. 0 in week 6, 1 in week 5. Had a big 4-target game in the red zone in week 3. So what happens when they get in the red zone? A lot of the rushing. DeAndre Swift, 6 red zone carries last week, 4 red zone carries the week before. Just 3 straight weeks with just 1 red zone carry, 5 through 7. But then another big run weeks 2 through 4 with a lot of touches in the red zone. He's also been targeted a few times in the red zone. Not in the last 3 weeks, but in weeks 4, 5, and 6, at least 1 target in the red zone each of those weeks. So once they get in close, they take to the ground a little bit. Hurts obviously can run them in on his own. And then the targeting in the red zone for Dallas Goedert, I have to assume, I don't have it in front of me. Let me pull it back up. I had it a second ago, but then I went to look for kick return guys. For Dallas Goedert, we are dealing with... So we have an absence of no targets the last 2 weeks in the red zone, but a run of 5 straight weeks with at least 1. What do the red zone pass attempts look like? I do know we have NBA coming up. I'm not going to chew too much more time. We're going to jump to the lineup builder in just a minute. You can see that right here. There's the discrepancy I'm describing. Pat Mahomes, even with these limited receiving core he's working with, has thrown the ball 50 times in the red zone. Jalen Hurts has thrown it only 27 times. Jalen himself runs the ball when he gets in close. They hand off to Swift when they get in close. Targets are kind of limited in the red zone once they get in. But obviously they can score touchdowns from far away, which is good news. We talked about the tight end spot on the Eagles at the top of the show. I do think it's Stoll first. Probably runs the most routes. Probably draws the most targets. I think it's Calcaterra second. And then I think Alberto is probably only out there to block. Maybe he runs 2 routes. I wouldn't expect a target. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Obviously, any one of these guys that gets a touchdown is going to be a lever tonight. Stoll properly at real player prices. At least on the DraftKings slate, they're all basically 55 or 5,000. It's negligible on the FanDuel slate. But he's a real player on the DK slate, where Calcaterra and Alberto are not. So there is that advantage. He's the interesting one, I think. Calcaterra. Let's see. Just 5 catches for 81 yards in his 15 games last year as a rookie. Yeah, I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, that one is kind of just standing out. Looks like he was targeted 3 times in the red zone last year. Didn't catch them. That's all we really need, right? And again, we just went through that they don't throw the ball as much in the red zone. But if we get that broken play, Jalen running for his life, Calcaterra pops into the end zone, is standing there, wide open, and probably drop it. But I do think that, if we're going to go that direction and look for those cheapo tight ends, I favor them a little bit over Alberto. Oh, Kevin, absolutely, buddy. Yeah, free promotion for the site. Yeah, do it, man. Pop that up there. Somebody was asking about that in Discord the other day, and I didn't end up dropping it in, but I think they just went and copy pasted it off the site. I know our pal Dennis, XX Cubs fan, is out there. He's got his own one that he made that looks pretty good. But yeah, if you just want to copy paste off of the YouTube page here, off the website, whatever you want to do, or if you remind me in the Discord, I'll grab the file that I use and I'll drop it in there. But yes, please, if you have the desire to show the Roto Scouts flag on your account with the avatar there, by all means. The more of those that land on the top of boards, and as everybody's doing well, the better it looks for all of us. We also thank you to whoever it was. I don't know where they came from or who they are in our little chat here, but somebody with a long list of people who follow them for DFS purposes tweeted about us yesterday, and we picked up, I don't know, like 30 or 40 Twitter followers, which, again, is not like crazy volume, and it's not like doesn't lead directly to things, but just get the word out. I love it. I appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you for asking about it so I could talk about it, and I appreciate you wanting to do it, buddy. Thanks. Good luck tonight. So let's jump over to the builder. Gotta bear in mind that it's 5:11. All right, we're all right. We can talk NBA for like 45 and then have time to build lineups. So let's just get into this. All right, so we want to see what the stupid broken salary. So if you put Mahomes in the captain spot on DK, you're already dealing with just 6,600 per position. So you could go like, which actually is all right because you do have so many cheap receivers. Like if you're going Mahomes captain and you just go like that, like you've already clawed your money back. You give him 2 of his 3 top wide receivers, and now you're back up to 9,000 per spot for the last 3. So that's funny, actually. That's unique with Mahomes. I hadn't really thought about that. But if you're not going Kelsey, you're not going Rashee Rice, and you can honestly, if you wanted to go Rashee Rice instead of one of these guys, even that is, you're back up to 7,800 per spot. Rashee Rice will be the higher owned guy. That's really helpful for being able to roster Mahomes in the captain spot. I hadn't thought it through entirely from that angle. So let's go back to the Sky Moore version. Let's continue on this front. So, what the hell is... Oh, I've got this. Let me just redo this board real quick. Yeah, sorry. I don't have that sorted in the order of salary, which is annoying. Sorry. Stupid hidden columns. All right, let's forget it. Let's just, I'll deal with it. I just want to see what you can, what the fuck? So yeah, even with that, if you drop Jalen into that, you're still at 82. So I mean, these guys being this cheap as actual tangible wide receivers is pretty damn good. You got 8,000 for the last spot. That's dumb. And Jerick McKinnon. That's not a terrible Pat Mahomes lineup. Throws touchdowns to this guy from time to time. Throws passes to these guys. Hurts and Swift. So you just get that Eagles We're scoring with our legs today upside. If you wanted to swap in a pass catcher instead of Swift, not that Swift isn't a target. You got 24 to go, so I could go easily to Devonta. If you go to Devonta, you're not dealing with much more ownership there. Damn. So different story because of how cheap those wideouts are. Different story in the captain spot for Patty Mahomes. Let's go the other way and do the Jalen. And you'll actually see the impact a little bit here. 16.5 takes us down to 67. And then if you give him AJ, you're down to 58. Mumba, I didn't run any sims for NFL yet, so I don't have those lined up. But we do have the NBA sims as usual. Sims are very, very good. It's actually been annoying this year with the popularity of sims from different sites. A lot of the lineups I used to get to at like crazy low ownership, been duped a lot. And I've won with a couple of those this year, and what should have been bigger wins have been split a few too many ways. Yeah, it's just I'm trying to think if I can do it quickly in the background. No, because I would need to grab the ownership and everything. It's kind of, you got to jump through a few hoops for NFL just to be able to do both sites. And with the way that the captain ownership goes, I actually have to input it, not because of AceMind, actually because of the way that RG, whose ownership I use, displays their ownership. For whatever reason, in the CSV file that you can export, they don't put the captain ownership, so you actually have to go in and like eyeball it manually. It's a pain in the ass. So yeah, next showdown slate Thursday. Remind me Thursday, and I'll try and pop sims in here because it is important. But that's a lot of like what we're looking for, and when we do these, by looking for the uniques, the dupes. All right. So we've got Jalen, we've got AJ, and we've got 58. So this is going to play the same because I can go to these guys with this lineup as well. It's just for their correlation to Patty Mahomes. I don't know that I want to go to two of these guys. So I can use like a Sky Moore to lower my salary, to bring back my salary a little bit. But I don't know that I want to load up multiple guys like that. I'd rather go to like a Pacheco, who honestly is not all that expensive. Like Elliott. And then I've got 75. So I don't want to go more Pacheco and McKinnon. Somebody else from the Eagles. Stoll. That leaves a lot of money on the table, and it's kind of an Eagles wipeout. But it's fairly realistic. Hurts with AJ, their kicker, the presumptive lead tight end, and then Sky Moore, Isaiah Pacheco from the other side. If you want to take your leftover money and give it to Rashee Rice instead of Sky Moore, you can. That leaves you at 300. You're still fairly low owned. Not bad. So, Hurts and Mahomes definitely looking pretty playable in those captain roles. A little bit cheaper if you did it with Kelsey, but let's go a different direction. Because you do want to still differentiate these things. Let's go like a Devonta Smith captaincy. I want Jalen with him. Let's see if we can get Jalen and Patty in there. That's got us down to 47. Oh, somebody gave Mamba a Sabonis and Fox tip that had him up in the top 20 of the last game. Sorry, Green, I missed your green tongue man. Got it. For some reason, those letters didn't go together as I was trying to read them. Green tongue man. I apologize. I think I pulled out the, or is that the change I just made at the end of that one? I think it's the change I made at the end anyway. I'll give you full credit for it. I just did it. I hadn't seen your note, but I think I did do that. All right, so 47 per. I don't want to drop to Tony, but you can go like Miko, you go MBS, you go these. It's a really unique showdown slate with how cheap these Chiefs are. All these guys are relevant, and all these guys are cheap. It's interesting. Let's go. I don't think we can afford that. No, we can't. 14th. Actually, 10 off the top leaves 43. We could. You'd have to get really silly this way, but this is not unaffordable. What do I have? 21 per spot. So actually, you could even still go. Like, it's just dumb. And then 1900 left. I can get OZ if I want him. It's a weird one. Out of all these that I've built so far, oddly, this one is the most duped. Which is just dumb, because this isn't that great a lineup. It's really interesting the way that DraftKings priced this one this week. You can do basically whatever configurations of these guys you want. Like, this lineup has Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, and Kelsey in it. That's silly. Can you get Kelsey captain? I mean, I know you can get it. Why is this giving me problems with copying? In use by another application? The fuck does that mean? Kelsey captain, Mahomes Hurts, 4,200 left, and you just do the same, stupid things. Let's go to hell. I bet I can get Rashee Rice in there. I mean, obviously, if you wanted to go to just Calcaterra or Quegbenam and take those shots, you can do literally anything you want. I haven't used either of these guys yet in any of these lineups. Let's say, like, Julio. Whoops. I don't even want to go to Julio. But I will, because he's more expensive than OZ. That still leaves me 28. You can do whatever you want on this slate. Holy hell. That's obviously breaking it, but I was going to do this. And then, all right, so this is where you'd have to go to, like, the Albertos of the world, the Calcaterras. That's owned 9 times. Dumb. Lose me 800. I could take him to 42. Do I have a $4,000 player? 42 for Kadarius Toney. I'd prefer Sky Moore. If you go Watson over Moore, you can pick up from Calcaterra. You can get to 2,000. And you could go CEH if you wanted him. You can go to OZ. 40 times. All right, it's play whatever you want week on DraftKings, which is good because there's a milli up top. FanDuel, a little bit tighter, I'm sure. Although maybe not. Some fairly priced guys through here, but they're definitely like Watson 8,000. They're a little bit tighter. Let's go. So a foundation of Mahomes in the MVP, Rashee Rice, Jalen Hurts leaves me 82 per spot with these last 2 spots. So yeah, it's pretty much you can do whatever you want week on FanDuel as well. That would take me down too far. All right, maybe not as extreme anything you want week. Because you can't get Devonta into that lineup also. You can't get DeAndre into that lineup. You can probably on the Chiefs side. Yeah, we get MV. No. Yeah, FanDuel's tighter. All right. Good. You go Mecole, and then you got 95. So you're like Elliott. I don't love that. So let's get cheaper in that spot. Yeesh. It's not a bad lineup, but that is duped through the nose. What, 8,000? Moore takes it down a little bit. He's, I guess, less owned than Watson is, which is weird. So yeah, a little bit more constricted on the FanDuel slate in terms of being able to get like 4-star caliber guys in there. If you wanted to go Mahomes and Kelsey's probably restrictive to getting anything reasonable with Hurts. Like, you can't have Hurts plus any of his 3 primary skill players in that version, but you can have a Mahomes, Kelsey, Hurts lineup that leaves 62 per spot. So Mahomes, Kelsey, Hurts, McKinnon, and a $6,000 guy, which would be either you can go to the tight ends from the Philly side, you could go to the Blake Bell, dart throw play, hope for a touchdown dart throw play. You could go to CEH, Noah Gray, same thing, the dart throw play. So it's pretty limiting. But on the idea that Jack Stoll is there to give you a little bit of tight end value, he's popular because he's so cheap. 47 if you go the Calcaterra route. 27 if you go Albert O. There you go. No faith in Albert Equipment. I'm getting any action on FanDuel tonight, apparently. So yeah, it's tighter. Let's try and do one that we would actually want to have. Let's go like Devonta, Jalen, Mahomes. Who's Bucker? Ooh, Bucker's pricey. 95 for the kicker. Leaves me 5. Whew. So now you got to go Calcaterra. I don't want to be duped twice. That's because that's currently my placeholder, actually. I just wanted to see it. That's not why that's 2. It's not because I have a lineup with that in there already. But if you use it, you'll be copying me. Let's make that one a little different, though. Instead of going Bucker, Calcaterra, 72 per. Go more realistic guys. Sky Moore. And Julio. Oh, wow. That's pretty unique and much more viable than that other one. Interesting. Julio must not have any ownership on him. That's a super playable lineup. Don't mind if I do. Defense is in play a little. I don't know. Kickers, I think, a lot more in play than defense in this one. You could definitely get both defenses, as we saw. Decent sack totals, decent pressure rates. Put these quarterbacks on their backs a few times. 31 sacks for KC, 30 sacks for the Eagles on the season. More limited in terms of the interceptions. So you're probably looking for a handful of quarterback sacks, and you're going to get scored on both sides with your defense. So I think defense is more limited. Kickers just feel like they're going to be more involved in this one. But I think we're fairly heavy into a lot of skill players, QBs, skill players. So I think that's it for the football show, guys. Hang out one sec while I just change shares here, and we'll talk about basketball for about a half hour. Keep in mind that any sims or minutes or anything like that were done and assigned before the show started. So anything that's changed, we don't yet have accounted for. Let's see if anything's changed real quick. Isaiah Livers available to make his season debut. Pretty sure I have him in. Jalen Duren out. Forget whether I had him in. Jackson Davis now probable. Apparent Shingun, thank you to Underdog. I'm just reading off their Twitter feed right now. Apparent Shingun down to questionable. Matt Ryan out. We had that. Shingun doesn't go. That'll be impactful. All right, so some changes to make. Nothing overly crucial, I don't think, as far as the known knowns right now. Probably some unknown unknowns lingering out there that'll screw us. Let's get into this one. Of course. Why are these guys... I did the names the way I was supposed to this week. This time. I don't think any of these guys are going to be critical. I'm not sure why they didn't show up in Sims, but like Svi, even at 31, isn't going to matter with a 12-point projection. $4,800 Jaime Jaquez, definitely not going to matter, so I'm just going to lose these guys for now. If anything changed and those guys are on the board, they'll just land in your lineups. These are the guys we actually simmed out. So some clear value plays again at the top of the board on DraftKings. $3,800 Corey Kispert is really, really popular over there. 26-minute projection. Last time out, he gave you 26 minutes. He also gave you 16 FanDuel points. 0.70 FanDuel points per minute on the season, 0.75 DraftKings points per minute. Just by virtue of being incredibly cheap, he lands in these lineups a decent amount of the time. It's not that you're expecting ceiling. It's not that you're expecting much scoring at all from Corey Kispert. You just get enough value out of having him in one of these two spots at that price. And the same is true for Norm Powell with a little bit more of a realistic ceiling. 0.80 DraftKings points per minute on the season, 0.78 FanDuel points. Played 30 minutes the last time out, gave you 24 FanDuel points. Got him into 27-minute projection. I think that's fairly realistic. Should be a pretty wide open game there. What's their... Before I say that, let me make sure that they're... not as open as I thought. Pace up, but only by like a possession for them. In terms of the Vegas totals, actually let me go to Pinnacle because I want to read off the most current versions. First game, the Bucks and Wizards game, 246.5 point total, monster target. 10-point spread, but still plenty of pieces in that game. That's part of what's lifting Kispert. Celtics and Charlotte, 234 point total. Celts without a couple pieces, so that could get interesting. 214.5 between the Knicks and the T-Wolves in what feels just like a grindy, low-scoring, low-end kind of a DFS game. I wouldn't be surprised if that one cleared the under for 214.5. 9-point spread between the Clippers and Spurs, 230.5 points on the total. 237 between the Pellies and the Kings. That's another interesting game given the total and just a 1-point spread. That's the game that's got the highest total and the best point spread, where both teams realistically will be in it through the entire thing, fighting tooth and nail, hopefully down the stretch. Total clunker between the Heat and the Bulls, 209.5. There's only a 1-point spread in that one too, but 209.5. Ugly. 218.5, not that great either. 8-point spread between the Rockets and the Warriors at the end of the night. But yeah, we're seeing directly the result of that big spread for Mr. Kispert here. And then Norm Powell on the Clippers side from the 230.5 point game. Also drawing some value just given the extreme low pricing. Freddie Van Vliet, both sites. Powell, by the way, both sites. Kispert really only DraftKings. 8% of the time, 9% of the time in winners on FanDuel. He's not irrelevant to the FanDuel slate, but at 4,200 small forward only, he is nowhere near as valuable as he is over on DraftKings in Sims. By the way, for anybody new, these Sims are courtesy of our pals at AceMind. AceMind.io. These are using our projections in their Sim tool. Great little Sim site. They've got an optimizer. They have Sims you can run 50,000. This is run 50,000 times for DraftKings, 50,000 times for FanDuel. Just used it to create the full pool, and that's what we're drawing results from. You can also build a pool of your own lineups and drop them in and sim them against a sim pool, which is the way that I like to do it when I've got time. But just a really, really strong tool. So that's where our win rates, our top 1%ers are coming from. Freddie VV, a little bit more value on DraftKings for 75, 8,000 on FanDuel, definitely valuable. 20% of the time in winners, gave you 40 points in 40 minutes the other night. 0.98 on the season, 1.03 on the season on DraftKings. Point per minute-ish kind of players always have value at fair mid-range, mid-market prices. And especially with the minutes, Freddie Van Vliet, one of the more secure, just gigantic minutes guys in the entire league. Playing 36.7 minutes a night over the 11 games so far this season. Played 40 the last time out. I've got him at 37 tonight, but it's a realistic 37. He just plays nothing but minutes. Last 5 games for Freddie. Here he is right at the top of the board. How about that? Averaging 40 minutes over the last 3, 40, 41, 41, 40 the last 4. A 29-minute game in 5 games ago. But that's a pretty crazy run. Jordan Poole, kind of unavoidable, unfortunately. 6,600 point guard shooting guard. He's just going to be in lineups. 6,400 point guard shooting guard on DraftKings. Just going to be in lineups. Lands and winners 30% of the time. Monster total in that game like we talked about, but not a player I trust at all. 0.89 FanDuel points per minute, 0.93 DraftKings points per minute. Gave us a total mess of a game the other day. 28.5 minutes, 10.2 fantasy points. You get those games where Jordan Poole's just out there looking completely disinterested in even scoring, which is problematic because normally he's disinterested in everything else when it comes to like team strategy, getting his teammates involved or anything like that, and he really, really cares about scoring. When you get him also disinterested in scoring, it's not great. Terrence Mann from the Clippers, another piece of value here, 4,500 on FanDuel, 4,000 on DraftKings has him landing in a lot more winning lineups over there. 5.6 points per dollar, 0.61 fantasy points per minute on DraftKings. Gave you 18.7 FanDuel points in 21 minutes the other night. That's the kind of player that he is. But with a 28-minute projection, that handful of fantasy points for this price at these positions is trending toward some value. Miles Bridges, back in action. He's played 32-minute average, 31.5 the last time out, 33 fantasy points. Got him back to being Miles Bridges, and he's hitting the board pretty hard on DraftKings because he's still only 57 over there. Small forward, power forward, 1.01 points per minute in the first two games. On FanDuel, they've got him to relatively correct pricing, I think. As time goes on, Bridges is a good enough player that he'll get back into the 8,000 range, I think. But for right now, I think that's an appropriate price. But even that changed, from 57 to 64, site to site, but no multi-position eligibility. Even with the $700 salary bump against the higher cap, not really at all involved on FanDuel. 0.86% of the time in top ones, 1.3% of the time in winners. Greg says, Poole, hate that guy. Face orange raised eyebrow. I assume that's an emoji that I'm not getting. It would be cool if you just typed face orange raised eyebrow. Yeah, not a Poole fan. Jake used to love rostering Poole. Freddie Van Vliet, Jalen Green, Kevon Looney. Little game stack. Interesting. Yeah, Alvarado, I'm not entirely sure what he's going to look like. Yeah, and Şengün midday downgrade. Yeah, that must have hit right after I posted the updates and was getting ready for the show. That'd be critical. He's been really, really good. If he comes off the board, that'll have an impact on DraftKings. Şengün, sitting right there. I guess that's a good point to get into some of the position by position. I was going to just do like a overview style, but let's look at some of the positioning. Now, since we were talking Şengün, we'll start with centers. So he's right here, 8,300 on FanDuel. Was looking playable and good, not crushing it, but really outside of the 23% that we were getting for Zach Collins on FanDuel, nobody in this version of the sword anyway, which I think gets everybody that has So nobody really crashing value on the FanDuel slate at the center spot. Kind of a big rotation day, it looks like. You've got Jokic, obviously. You've got some Zubac, you've got some Vooch, some Bam. Each of those guys are just drawing like good type returns. So losing Şengün will probably feed a little bit more into some of those guys. On DraftKings, it's going to be more critical, though. 7,900, he was landing in 13% of winners, 15% of top ones. So you get some more probably pickup for guys down board here. Who is that lingering? Jeff Green. Lingering. Boy, if he picks up minutes, that's going to be problematic. And probably would, thinking it through. What is... bear with me. I'm just looking at their depth chart, trying to piece together how I would do the minutes real quick. So, I mean, I do think Jeff Green would see an uptick. I think Jock Lando would see an uptick, who we've already got getting some minutes. Jeff Green's obviously right there getting minutes. And then, did I go Boban? Has he played? When's the last time Boban got in a game? He's gotten into 3 games this year. A maximum of 6 or 7 minutes. Maybe he picks up the scraps of whatever minutes are left over. But it doesn't look like it's going to be a play. I think the Jeff Green is going to be kind of interesting. If you lose Şengün. At 3,500, he picks up another, even if I only give him like 6, 7 minutes, he's going to pick up a chunk. And then Lando will probably hit. He's down here. Lando's only 3,000 too. Those guys will get problematic if Şengün doesn't go. Problematic meaning not extremely high-end players that you're going to probably end up with, but 3,000 and 3,500, those are just going to be pretty clear-cut value blocks. I'm just kind of hoping Şengün goes. I don't want to have to deal with that. Looney looks good. Somebody mentioned him in the chat just a minute ago. 5,500 on the DraftKings board, 15% win rate, 14% win rate for Mark Williams, Danny Gafford. So both of these sites, really a lot of spread at the center spot today. A lot more times we're seeing, 30s win rates, 25s at least. Your maximum win rate on DraftKings today is Kevon Looney at that 15. If you lose Şengün, these guys will jump. You'll get one of these 2 value guys from the Rockets bouncing into one of these top spots, probably clearing 25%. It'll just change the entire shape of that slate. Giannis with realistic returns, probably getting a fair amount of them in power forward in the util spot. Obviously a primetime star option, 1.56 DraftKings points per minute, 1.53 FanDuel points. In nearly 38 minutes, 74.5 FanDuel points the other day. You've got Wemby down here. Crushed me the other day. I somehow ended up with not any of them on that day that he went off. 65.6 FanDuel points in 31.1 minutes. I think he had 8 blocks that day. I don't think that's the ceiling. I think we'll see a ceiling further up than that during the year. It's just a remarkable ball player. 6.89% of winners on the FanDuel slate, 8,900. The price is already up, 8,800 on DraftKings, 5% of the time. Totally playable, but probably at this point, we're already at the point where we consider him a luxury. He's kind of one of the high-end guys that you're saving money with those value plays to pay up to get to. Jokic, same thing. High-end value guy, or high-end guy that is the luxury item. You can play him on any given slate. If you end up building out a lineup and you get to the center spot after everybody's in, and he's your last man in for 12-8, there is nothing wrong with clicking on Nikola Jokic. Do these returns suggest that maybe tearing that lineup up and freeing up 3 new spots and reallocating some of that salary is probably the better way to go? Yes, that's what these sim results tell you. But none of that says that Nikola Jokic as an individual in that spot, once you've built out a high probability lineup, and let's say it's lineup, 30 out of 150 and you've built 29 that didn't include him, well, those all already accounted for that. We should switch this up. And that's the one. Now you do play some Nikola Jokic, right? So you definitely always want these guys, even sub 10%, even when they're lower, 5% of the time for Domantas Sabonis. I do want to have some Domantas Sabonis in my life. On FanDuel, 8% of the time, a little bit more involved. 1.4 FanDuel points per minute, 1.42 DraftKings points per minute. With a $2,000 difference between him and Jokic, $1,000 and change between him and Giannis, those guys do need to outperform him at those salary differences. So there's always room for the stars. Danny Gafford, again, that high-end game environment between Milwaukee and Washington. Definitely going to keep him involved. Brolo in that same game, showing a lot of value to me. 31 points, 5.52 points per dollar. Landing and winning lineups 9% of the time on DraftKings. Roughly the same on FanDuel. Here's Portis down here. I was looking for Portis. With a 26-minute projection, Portis not really that relevant to the FanDuel slate, power forward and center. Not really that relevant on the DK slate either. Once you get down to this level on both sites, it gets really, really thin. So while it's distributed, it's also kind of peaks fairly high. DK-wise, these top 12 options account for 126% of the winning lineup spots at center, but it's multiple spots, obviously, distributed. But that's a big chunk of your winners from this group of guys, and then not as much downboard as we would typically get.
We talked about Zach Collins, but just real quick, 1.03 FanDuel points per minute on the season, gave you 30 in 26 minutes the other night. Just a nice piece of value. His price hasn't really risen by all that much. He's been very playable, and he's been pretty productive this season. Not at all relevant to the DraftKings slate. 0.77% of winners, 6,800. Just getting outperformed by everybody on DraftKings. But for 64, power forward and center on FanDuel, you get to a pretty good amount of them. Curious to see when we look at those sims, whether he lands more in the power forward spot or in the center-only spot. A lot of center-only options on FanDuel, so I would suspect that we get most of our Zach Collins in power forward today and let these guys land in the center spots, but maybe not. I'd be interested to see that. We talked Norm Powell, but again, just really relevant to both sites. More so on DraftKings at 41, multi-position eligible. 50+% of winners. Corey Kispert, much more relevant on DraftKings for 38, 40% of winners. Terrence Mann, going right in line with Norm Powell. Similar results, 30% of the time in winners on DraftKings for 4,000. Small forward, power forward. 5.66 points per dollar. 0.61 points per minute, though. Bear in mind, these guys are not high-end performers. Not a man here is above 0.80 on either site in terms of points per minute. Bridges we touched on, relevant on DraftKings, not so much on FanDuel. Paul George, now we get back to star caliber players. 8,600 on FanDuel looks great, 35% of winners over there. 25% of winners on DraftKings also looks very good. That puts him 5th. But definitely looking even better on FanDuel. Having him the same price site to site, that's where that difference is coming from. Against the higher FanDuel cap, obviously that creates a little bit better value. Aaron Gordon still landing in a lot of FanDuel lineups for me, a little bit less on DraftKings. Right at a point per minute. A little bit less on the DraftKings slate. 6,900 power forward only. 6,700 on DraftKings. Definitely still a very relevant piece of the puzzle there. Little bit of an opportunity. I think they're right about their typical pace. Actually, they're down. Oh, no. Wait. Detroit side is down a possession. I have a team and an opponent column, and if I'm scrolled over too far, I accidentally select the team I'm looking to look up as the opponent, and that screws it up because it shows me the other team. So yeah, the Nuggets pick up like a possession and a half in this one. So I've got Gordon right on his 1.0 points per minute. I've got Jokic a little bit above his ridiculous already production. And then MPJ in that rotation, Reggie Jackson. It's really those two guys. While Murray's out. Is anybody else from Denver relevant? Yeah, MPJ. It's not on FanDuel as much, 8% of the time, but 22% of the time on DraftKings. 6,800 versus 7,200. Multi-position eligible on DraftKings, not on FanDuel. That's where your difference comes from. 1.04 FanDuel points per minute, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. So MPJ a little bit better on DraftKings. Aaron Gordon a little bit better, but playable on both sides. A little bit better on FanDuel, but very, very playable on both sides. Kawhi just goes hand in hand with Paul George. I don't know how much of both of them I want, but they're both perfectly playable. Harden's going to be in a similar position, I'm sure, when we get to him. If you weren't here the other day, Kawhi and Harden were part of an $80,000 bad beat that I took on Friday night slate. It was a fun one. If you didn't see the end of that Clippers game, I described it on the football show, which is real quick just because it's something to talk about. 6 seconds left in the game. James Harden wins the game with a 4-point play. 104-100. Everything hits 0. The Rockets had inbounded the ball, taken it down, shot a meaningless 3, missed it. Kawhi Leonard had grabbed the rebound. My several points lead for 100K that I'd been sitting on the entire fourth quarter of that game was trimmed down to like a 2.5 points, but the clock went to 0. Waiting on late changes. 5 or so minutes go by. Thought we got it. Starting to get a little, all right, maybe we got this one. And then all of a sudden it changes. And it turned out what happened was they called a foul on that last rebound. Dylan Brooks, as somebody pointed out, like you needed another reason to hate Dylan Brooks. I think it was Blaine from over at Ace Mind. Like you needed another reason to hate Dylan Brooks. But because it was the stupid NBA in-season tournament, there's a point differential factor for that as a tiebreaker. So they awarded Kawhi 2 free throws. They're in the box score literally with 0.00 seconds left in the game because it was a foul with 0.2. So that just goes to end game status because you need 0.3 to do anything in the NBA by the rules. So, with 0 seconds left on the clock, Kawhi Leonard hit first free throw. I was still winning. Second free throw, that's the one that got me. So when I lose creatively, but went from first to second on the FanDuel tourney and went from 100K to 20K. Ouch. Can't do anything but laugh, as I've said. Told that story a number of times over the weekend. Jaylen Brown, star caliber guy, 19% of the time in winners on FanDuel, 11% on DraftKings. We get a pretty good mid-range here. Deeper mid-range across the forward positions. Obviously, we're looking at small forward and power forward together. But a little bit deeper, a little bit more spread to both value guys and star kind of guys coming up similarly at the forward spots on the DraftKings slate. A little bit more stark on FanDuel. Deeper, I think, as compared to the center view that we were looking at before. You've got a few guys that spike to, I think, higher positions site to site. Or maybe it's just that they're in different spots because you got some low-end guys up here. Koulibaly, a little run of Washington players here. Koulibaly, Danilo, Denny Avdija, and Kyle Kuzma. These are your two actual good players in that group. Koulibaly might be good over time, but right now he's a .76 FanDuel points per minute player, .75 DraftKings points. But at salary, 4,600 on DraftKings, he's landing in the top lineups 15% of the time. Gallo at 3,900, that's just salary-based. 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, but we're talking about an 18-minute projection. So right around here does get him into winning lineups, between this and like 25, 26 points. Gets him into the high side of that, gets him into winning lineups 15% of the time. But you do have a stretch of all these guys basically looking the same. So if you're at the forward spot and you need a guy, depending on what range of salary, if you've got 39 left, 46 left, 6,000 left, or 8,000 left, you've got an option from this Washington team that looks pretty similar. So that's just nice to keep in mind. Like if you're hand building out there and you click some stuff together, just think Washington when those spots come up, because you also do have Corey Kispert in that same thing. He's at 38 and he's in winning lineups 40% of the time. It's just dumb. Kispert will probably be in that lineup that you've built already because he's just a foundational one of the first clicks you make. But you could go to a second one of these guys if you've got that value left. Giannis is Giannis. Jeff Green will pick up value if we have to. Hopefully we don't. Jaylen Brown looks like Jaylen. Jimmy Butler looks like Jimmy Butler. Jaylen looks a lot better than Jimmy on the FanDuel slate. They look pretty similar to one another on the DraftKings board. 7,900, 8,300, 11% versus 9.7%. But on FanDuel, he's basically tripling them up. 19.4% of winners for 7,700 multi-position eligible for Jaylen. Jimmy at 88, both forward spots, just 6% of winners. That's a big, big difference. Keegan Murray, a lot of value on FanDuel, a lot less so on DraftKings. 61 on FanDuel, 63 on DraftKings. Also power forward only on DraftKings. Limiting. 0.86 FanDuel points per minute so far, projecting for 34. Plenty of opportunity. That Sacramento-New Orleans game, again, is a potential game with one of the ones that had a good total and a close point spread. So that's one to keep an eye on. Ajer Thompson, 1.14 FanDuel points per minute. He's just been dynamite. 30 minutes last time, just 25 FanDuel points. Got him at a pretty healthy projection, right around a little bit lower. Probably closer, it's 33 in 32 minutes, so we're closer to a point per minute than what he's done so far. Trying to be realistic about it, trying to gauge where to keep him. And they lose possession and change in this matchup on the Detroit side. I wouldn't quibble with somebody who added a point or two. I wouldn't quibble with somebody who detracted a point or two. But I think Thompson, moderately playable on both sides. Looks more like an also-ran guy, but wouldn't totally stun me if he got into some high-end lineups. Anthony Edwards, Zach LaVine, Wemby. Just kind of looking like who they are on DraftKings, which is, good, very high-end mid-range players who can be in lineups but aren't priorities on this slate. On FanDuel, a lot less appealing. 91 for AE, 7,800 for Zach LaVine. Not landing in winners all that much. Jason Tatum, 6.6% of winners on FanDuel. A little bit better looking on FanDuel. 10-2 on both sites. A couple big differentiators site to site down here. Andrew Wiggins, I don't want to have to play Andrew Wiggins again. 0.72 FanDuel points per minute. Did give us 41.5 in 35 minutes the other night, so hopefully coming around a little bit for the season, back toward who we used to be. But it's been awful so far this year for the most part for Andrew Wiggins. But right now, where he's projected, where he's landing, 25% of winners, can't argue with it on FanDuel. Just 2.5% of winners for 5,600, same positioning on DraftKings. And then Jayshawn Tate, just a 20-minute projection, but he's really cheap, 3,900 both forward spots on FanDuel. Just looks like one of those cheapo buy a square value guys. 4,100 on DraftKings, you can see the difference with those other guys. The $4,100 Norm Powell and the $3,800 Corey Kispert take care of any need to use that on the DraftKings slate. But Jayshawn Tate, potentially relevant to FanDuel. Could also pick up a couple minutes as well if I've just got minutes to spend. The now even more hated Dylan Brooks is looking a little bit relevant on the FanDuel slate, which sucks. 24% of the time for him, 16% of the time for Alec Burks. These are kind of price and position driven, but a little bit more of downboard value on the FanDuel side. Or landing a little bit differently, I should say. Partly because Kispert's small forward only, partly because he's 42. And then jump into the guard spots. Keeping an eye on the clock. It's almost 6. A lot of these guys have been talked about. Who hasn't been? Freddie Van Vliet has been, but again, he just looks great. Point guard only across sites. Plenty of minutes, plenty of value at the price. A lot of upside for a basically FanDuel point per minute player who plays 37 to 40 minutes a night. There's just going to be value there every day until his price goes up. Jordan Poole, we talked about him. 33% of the time in winners on FanDuel, 30% of the time in winners on DraftKings. Both guard spots on both sites. Just can, any given slate, go out and deliver a total clunker like that. Doesn't feel good to use them, but I think we're going to have to on both sites. Paul George, we touched on when we were talking forwards. Looks very valuable on both sites. I imagine we'll get a pretty good share of them both across guard and forward. Brandon Podziemski, 22-minute projection, just 4,400 point guard, shooting guard on DraftKings. Becomes yet another just undeniable piece of building block type value. That said, not as much as these two guys. He's a pivot point from these two guys, but it's clear where the higher end value is. 25 minutes last time just gave us 13 FanDuel points. 0.92 on the season in the 9 games that he's played, but that comes in just 15.7 minutes a game. Here's Harden. So, Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi are all hitting these boards pretty hard. 17% of the time in winners on the DraftKings slate, 46% because he's only 7,200 on FanDuel. Ugh. 0.97 FanDuel points per minute, gave us 45 in 34.4 minutes the other night. Nothing to dislike about it. I don't think you necessarily want and probably wouldn't get to naturally in optimizers all 3 of those guys in a lineup, but any 2 of them are perfectly fine. Drew, looking like a piece of value. 20% of the time in winners on FanDuel, 12% on DraftKings. 5% for Reggie Jackson. 5,000 for Reggie Jackson has him in 15% of the winners on DraftKings. 4,800, 21% of the winners on FanDuel. Picking up some minutes in Denver. Cade, just 0.96 FanDuel points per minute so far this season. Was right about that level the last time out. 11.5% of DraftKings winners is a 1.04 per minute player on DraftKings. Picking up a little bit more sim returns because he's a little bit cheaper relatively on FanDuel because of his... It's funny, like you get that sometimes, where like the guy who's a lower end performer from site to site, just by virtue of because of that, he becomes cheaper over here, looks a little bit better where he's worse than he does where he's good, or slightly better in a points per minute sense because his salary's up over there. So it's just funny how the dynamics of these things work sometimes. Alex Caruso, been probable all day. I assume he's going to be out there. 0.98 FanDuel points, 0.94 DraftKings points. 11% of the time on DraftKings, not as relevant, just 5% of the time on FanDuel. Mike Conley, the limited version, 29 minutes a night, just a handful of fantasy points, 0.82 on FanDuel, 0.84 on DraftKings. 10% of winners across sites, so not irrelevant, but just kind of a is who he is, I think, veteran $5,100 play. If you've got the 51, you've got the open point guard spot, you can plug him in, but there's options I like better. You do have more value for Conley than Caruso at the same price. I'll give you that. But if I gave Caruso that extra minute, would it change? Probably, because he'd probably be at exactly that projection. Fox, Lillard, star caliber guys. Lillard looking a little bit better on the FanDuel slate, 9,200. DraftKings, he's just a 7.8% of winners, 9.7% of winners for 9,300 for Fox. He's just in 2% on FanDuel where he costs 99. That's a big difference. It's probably just dropping all of these shares into Dame Lillard for 700 less. 1.20 FanDuel points per minute for Lillard, 1.43 for De'Aaron Fox. He's been dynamite the games he's played. Down the board, starts to get thin on the DraftKings side, but any of Jalen Green, Anthony Edwards, Zach LaVine, LaMelo Ball, just for the raw scoring potential, any of these guys, the Brandon Ingrams of the world, any of those guys are playable despite the 2% returns. Those guys qualify, those high 8s into the 9s, all qualify for, we've saved our money as we've built the other components in the lineup. That's why I rostered Corey Kispert and Norman Powell. So now, even though he doesn't sim out great raw scoring potential, I'm going to take a little bit of LaMelo at 99. A little bit more in terms of FanDuel, like IQ, hitting the board a little bit. 5 minutes. I don't know that I love that. Did I leave a rate too high for IQ? Let me make sure on that one. He's a capable guy, but nope, no rate change on it. What do we have in? Updates will hit the site shortly after the show's over, by the way. 6 o'clock. Not going to wait on the 6:30 injury. Just going to try and knock it out. And then we'll deal with any updates. Yeah, I've got him below his production. All right, we're okay with IQ. So for 53, he's hitting the board a little bit on FanDuel, not at all for 56 on the DraftKings slate. Kevin Huerter for 57, hitting the FanDuel board, not the DraftKings board. 61 over on DraftKings, big price discrepancy. I think those are most of the relevant ones that are different site to site. Let's take a look at some of the sims, and then let's get out of here and get some lineups built. Probably going to go through this fairly quick, guys. This is Ace Mind, who we were talking about before. You see that? It'd be so great if there was just like an auto sizer for these windows. That's like, this would actually look good to your viewers. DraftKings first. No surprises, Norm Powell and Corey Kispert, both in that first top lineup. Gallo also creeping in there. Like I said, you can grab that second Wizards guy. Dame, Kevon Looney came up during the show. Bridges, De'Aaron Fox. So Dame and De'Aaron Fox land in that top DraftKings lineup. Kawhi in there as well. Pretty clear that a lot of your value plays go here. And here. A couple outliers with Drew, mostly Jaylen Brown in a few. Jaylen in both of these. Norm shifts into the small forward spot in that one. And those two don't use Corey Kispert, it looks like. How many do we have? I'm trying to see. I'm just trying to eyeball how many that we have with both Norm Powell and Corey Kispert. These have Corey Kispert and Terrence Mann. Norm, Terrence Mann. Kispert and Norm in this one. So they're both in that top one. Then we dip by a handful of lineups. This is again one course of 50,000 sims. But that's kind of interesting that, given how they're both in the top lineup so frequently, playing them both together might be slightly more limiting. And that might have to do with raw scoring potential, like what their ceilings look like. You do create a ton of value putting them both in the lineup. This is one that would skyrocket like with the Jeff Green share in there, you would be able to cram another piece of value into that. Or, excuse me, the value would be, the players would be the same, but the returns would go up because he'd be more likely to succeed if we give him a few minutes. This is a lot of good names in these lineups compared to what we normally see with DraftKings. It is Starsy Scrubsy. Maybe it's just because it's a couple clear-cut guys who are just landing in the scrub spots so many times that the star guys are standing out as I'm eyeballing this a little bit more. But these are pretty decent looking lineups. A lot of Brolo coming through in the center spot. A little bit of Vooch, some Gafford, some Williams, some Kevon Looney. What we're not getting really is a lot of star caliber centers. But remember, as we looked at the center spot, we did see everything look pretty flat going down the board. A lot of like 10% and below. So bonus is the first like star name. Now, granted, a lot of value, a lot of high-end guys landing in the util spot. Not value, like raw scoring potential. A lot of high-end utils. A lot of high-end players in the guard or forward only spots. So it really looks like two basic value spends get you to anything that you need on DraftKings, and they're pretty clear cut coming from that Washington game, and then coming from the Clippers. Norm Powell, Terrence Mann, Corey Kispert, and then one other Washington guy are your primary values today, right now. When that Rockets rotation goes pear-shaped, that's going to completely change. Mamba says, don't you love how you learn so much about the rules going from first to second? Lesson learns in NBA, NFL, and MLB this year. First to second on bogus things all year. Burrow 2 times. Rangers and NBA guys scratched when the game starts. Always painful. Always painful, my friend. But like I said, especially in the situation that I had on Friday, like I've done all I can, right? Everything's out of our control at that point. Late swaps have been closed for hours. Like, it is what it is. It's going to end up how it ends up. That's why I don't even watch. When I'm getting chiseled away at, I tend not to watch the games, and that's what I did the other night. When I'm chasing somebody with a realistic chance of getting there, I'll watch, because it's fun to watch your points pile up, and hopefully you get there. It's not as fun to get chiseled off of. Let's bounce over to, let's look at what those, just your returns on those cash lineups. So that top lineup's a pretty significant winner. Win probability is wild on that one compared to the other ones. Just one more look at that. Dame, Norm Powell, Corey Kispert, Miles Bridges, Kevon Looney, Darren Fox, Kawhi Leonard, Danilo Gallinari. Gallo's obviously your clunker in there, but that is a hell of a good lineup at the top of the board. FanDuel, we're going to go through this one quick, because less of you care. I care. Top lineup's got Harden in it. Next lineup down's got... Oh, I thought I... Where did I see... I sort of saw Paul George's name up at the top there, but maybe I'm crazy. Oh, there he is. So that one's got Harden, this one's got Harden. We get to Paul George down here. This one's got George and Harden in it. This one's got Kawhi. Just trying to see if we've got any with all three of those guys near the top. Don't think we do. I don't see one immediately. As usual, though, FanDuel, like just the name value in these lineups, just because of how the slates come together, always looks a little bit better, a little bit more balanced-y on the FanDuel side, I think. You do have value options in Andrew Wiggins because he's so cheap and projects out fairly well. Norm was just a value option across both sites. And then we're getting some like Reggie Jackson shares in here, a little bit of IQ. Don't love that IQ one, a little bit of Dylan Brooks that we looked at. And then plenty to spend on your Dame Lillard in a bunch of these. Clippers, stars in a bunch of these. George here, Kawhi. Clippers are all over it on FanDuel. Norm Powell, Terrence Mann, Kawhi, James Harden, Paul George. A lot of room for Giannis at the power forward spot. Giannis, or you go Giannis and cheap, or you can go KP Kuzma, which is good. Kuzma's been really good this year. So it's either, it looks like the power forward spot is an interesting one in terms of a balanced versus star scrub kind of approach. Actually, not even. Not that Giannis, Jason Tatum is star scrub. I didn't notice that one. I was thinking more Giannis. And Wiggins isn't a scrub. He's just played like one for most of this year. So there's money to spend at the power forward spot. That's kind of interesting. Center comes up a lot of value, guys. Kevon Looney, Naz Reid, Dan Gafford, Brolo. Out of all those guys, Gafford and Brolo, I think more so than Naz by any means. Mark Williams hitting a little bit. Bam. Bam's our first starish name at the center spot. Who I'm not seeing is Jokic. Here he is. A little bit less of a spend at center, I think, on FanDuel today. That does make, in an any given slate sense, of course, Jokic lineups become an interesting pivot, but putting him at the center spot with the dynamics of FanDuel completely changes the shape of what that lineup's going to look like. So they won't look anything like these lineups. A lot of solid options, though. There's one with Kawhi and Harden, Jordan Poole, Cade, Drew Holiday. It's a damn good lineup. Keegan Murray, Aaron Gordon. That one's got Harden, it's got Kawhi, but no Paul George. So it looks like, I think I was right about that. I think we're not going to see all three of those guys, Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, in the same lineup, but two of those guys are in a lot of these lineups. There's Harden, Paul George. Interesting stuff, fellas. It's going to be a good one. A little bit less winnings-wise. Less in play on FanDuel. It's just a 40K top on FanDuel today. 0.34% winner in that top lineup. Harden, Reggie, Jordan Poole, KCP, Tatum, Powell, Giannis, Wiggins, Kevon Looney. In that top one. All right, I got to get some lineups built for this thing. It's 6:11. We're going to punch out. We're going to wish everybody good luck in football. Good luck in basketball. Let's win 2 tonight. I usually say somebody go out and win something. I want you guys bringing back 2 skulls. I don't think you're supposed to say scalps anymore. I want somebody bringing back 2 skulls tonight. Or 2 different people bringing back 1. Let's take down football and basketball, boys. Good luck out there. Go win something. I will see you tomorrow. One way or the other, we're definitely going to have content and projections and everything. And I will try my best to do a show. If I'm not my parents doing it from the laptop, it might be a little clunky, but you guys rock. You guys tolerate that. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of you. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, follow the @RotoScouts on Twitter/X. I got to take Joker out because he's driving me nuts. I'm out of here. See ya.